Okay, so picture this. I'm standing in a rented hall, surrounded by pastel balloons and a mountain of baby gifts, trying to smile like this is the happiest day of my life. And it should be. I'm 28 years old, 7 months pregnant with my first child, and I've spent the last 2 years of my life, plus a solid $200 of my own savings, trying to get to this exact moment. This isn't just a baby shower. It's supposed to be my moment. My redemption. My name is Catherine. And if you'd asked anyone in my family, they'd probably describe me as quiet or maybe sweet. Definitely not like Annabelle. Annabelle is my cousin, 29 years old, just a year older than me, and she's always been the family's golden girl. She's loud, she's charming, she's got that magnetic personality that just pulls people in. Growing up, I was always the one in the background, the one who preferred a book to a crowd, the one who didn't quite fit the mould of what my mother, Cecilia, expected from a daughter. Cecilia, my mum, is 51. She's a proud woman, traditional, and she values appearances above almost everything else. She's always had this idea of what a successful, charismatic woman looks like, and in her eyes, Annabelle embodied it perfectly. Annabelle was the one who got straight A's without trying, who charmed all the relatives, who landed the perfect first job. Me. I worked hard for everything. I saved diligently, built my career quietly, and found a partner, Elijah, who sees me for exactly who I am, not who I'm supposed to be. Elijah is 30, and he's the most grounded, loyal person I know. He's been my rock through everything, especially the 2 years of trying to conceive, the endless doctor appointments and the quiet despair when another month passed with no good news. When I finally got pregnant, after all that struggle, I thought things might change. I thought maybe, just maybe, my mum would finally look at me with the same unbridled joy she always reserved for Annabelle's milestones. Annabelle's engagement, a family celebration that lasted a week, Annabelle's promotion. My mum practically took out an ad in the local paper. My pregnancy. It was met with a polite, almost hesitant, "Oh, that's nice, Catherine. Nice." Not ecstatic, not overjoyed, just nice. It stung, but I'd learned to live with it. This shower, though, was my chance to make my own joy, to celebrate something truly profound with the people who cared. I'd meticulously planned every detail. The venue, the catering, the games, even the little personalised favours. I wanted it to be perfect. My partner Elijah had tried to convince me to let him chip in, but I refused. This was my investment, my way of saying, I'm here, I'm doing this, and I'm doing it my way. The hall was filling up now. My best friend Zoe, who's 31 and blunt as a brick, was helping me direct people to their seats. She's the only one who truly understands the Annabelle-shaped hole in my family dynamic. My uncle Terrell, Annabelle's dad, a smooth talker at 58, was already holding court by the Mimosa bar, laughing a little too loudly. And then I saw her, my mum, Cecilia, walking in with Annabelle, who was already drawing eyes with her bright smile and perfectly styled hair. My mum's face, usually so composed around me, was alight as she chatted animatedly with Annabelle. It was the kind of genuine, effusive happiness I always craved from her, the kind she'd never shown me. I watched them, a familiar ache settling in my chest. Annabelle caught my eye and gave me a saccharine smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She waved, a little too grandly, and my mom followed her gaze, finally acknowledging me with a quick, almost dismissive nod. The ache intensified. Elijah, always perceptive, squeezed my hand. "You okay?" he murmured, his thumb rubbing circles on my knuckles. I forced a smile. "Just a lot going on." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper, his eyes fixed on Annabelle as she laughed with a group of my aunts. "I don't trust Annabelle," he said, his gaze hardening. "She's planning something." Elijah's whisper hung in the air, a cold premonition amidst the warm chatter. I tried to shake it off, to focus on the carefully curated joy of the day. The shower officially began. We played the usual games, guessing the baby food flavours, measuring my belly with string. I forced smiles, laughed at the right moments, but a part of me was on edge watching Annabelle. She was everywhere, flitting from group to group, her laugh a little too loud, her gestures a little too dramatic. My mum, Cecilia, followed her like a satellite, beaming. Then came the gift opening. It was a blur of tiny clothes, soft blankets, and practical gadgets. Each gift was a tangible piece of the future I was building, a future I'd fought so hard for. I felt a swell of gratitude for everyone who had come, for the friends and family who were genuinely happy for me. Elijah sat beside me, meticulously unwrapping each gift, his quiet excitement a comforting anchor. Towards the end, after most of the gifts were opened, I stood up. My heart was thumping. This was it. My moment to thank everyone, to express the overwhelming emotion of finally being here, 7 months pregnant, on the verge of motherhood. I took a deep breath, my hand instinctively going to my swollen belly. I wanted to say thank you, I started, my voice a little shaky but clear. To all of you for being here, for celebrating with Elijah and me. It's been a long journey to get to this point, and your support means the world. This baby, our baby, is truly a miracle, and I can't wait to meet them. I looked around the room, meeting eyes, trying to convey the depth of my gratitude. I saw a few teary eyes, a few nods of genuine warmth. I even saw Zoe give me a proud, encouraging smile. But before I could finish, before I could even get to the part about how much this day meant to me personally, a sniffle cut through the air. It was Annabelle. She was standing up, centre stage, her hand pressed dramatically to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. The room went quiet, all eyes turning to her. "Oh, Annabelle, what is it, dear?" my mum asked, already halfway out of her seat, her concern instantly shifting from me to my cousin. Annabelle took a shaky breath, her gaze sweeping the room, lingering just long enough on me to make sure I was watching. I just can't hold it in anymore, she choked out, her voice trembling with what sounded like overwhelming emotion. "Catherine, your speech was so beautiful, and it just made me realise that I have an announcement too." A collective gasp rippled through the room. My stomach clenched. Elijah's hand found mine under the table, his grip tightening. Annabelle's tears flowed freely now, but her smile was triumphant. "I'm pregnant too," she declared, her voice rising to a joyful crescendo. "Finnegan and I are expecting." The room exploded. Not with the gentle murmurs of congratulations that had followed my speech, but with a sudden deafening roar of excitement. And at the epicentre of it all was my mother, Cecilia. She let out a piercing shriek of pure, unadulterated joy, a sound I had never, not once, heard directed at me. She literally leapt from her chair, abandoning her half-eaten cake, and rushed across the room, arms outstretched. "Annabelle, my darling girl! Oh, this is wonderful! A true blessing!" Cecilia enveloped Annabelle in a hug so fierce, so overflowing with genuine happiness, it was like watching a dam break. She stroked Annabelle's hair, kissed her forehead, murmuring endearments, completely oblivious to the fact that her own daughter, 7 months pregnant, was still standing, forgotten, at the front of the room. My baby kicked then, a sharp, insistent jab against my ribs. It wasn't the gentle flutter of joy I usually felt. It was a jolt, a protest, a tiny echo of the stress and humiliation that was suddenly flooding my system. I stood there, rooted to the spot, watching as the entire room surged towards Annabelle. My aunts, my uncles, family, friends, they all swarmed her, offering hugs and congratulations. My uncle Terrell, Annabelle's father, clapped her on the back, beaming with pride. It was as if I had vanished, as if the entire elaborate $200 party I had thrown was suddenly, irrevocably, no longer about me. Annabelle, basking in the spotlight, pulled out her phone. "I even have the ultrasound," she announced, her voice thick with happy tears. She held up her phone, and a small, grainy image appeared on the screen, projected onto the wall by the videographer's equipment. It was a classic ultrasound image, a tiny, blurry shape in a dark sack. The crowd oohed and ahed, but then for a split second as Annabelle adjusted her phone, or maybe as the projection flickered, I saw it. A flash of text in the corner of the ultrasound image, almost too quick to register. A name. My name. Catherine. My breath hitched. No, it couldn't be. I blinked, but the text was gone, replaced by the generic ultrasound image again. Annabelle was still holding court, beaming, accepting congratulations. My mind reeled. Had I imagined it? The shock, the humiliation, the sheer audacity of it all. It was overwhelming. But that name. I knew what I saw, and a cold, hard knot began to form in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't just Annabelle being Annabelle. This was something else entirely. The baby shower ended in a blur of forced smiles and polite goodbyes. My mum, Cecilia, was still practically glued to Annabelle, cooing over her supposed pregnancy, while I felt like an invisible guest in my own home. Elijah stayed by my side, a silent, comforting presence, helping me pack up the remaining gifts. Zoe, bless her, gave Annabelle a look that could curdle milk before pulling me into a tight hug. "You okay?" she whispered, her eyes full of concern. I just nodded, too numb to speak. Later that evening, after everyone had finally left and Elijah and I were alone in our quiet apartment, the exhaustion hit me. But beneath the fatigue was a simmering anger and that nagging suspicion about the ultrasound. "Did you really see your name?" Elijah asked, his brow furrowed as he stacked baby books on a shelf. "I swear I did," I said, rubbing my temples. It was just a flash, but it looked like my patient ID, with my name on it. We didn't talk much more about it that night. I was too tired, too emotionally drained. But the next day, a notification popped up on my email. It was from Riley, the videographer, a link to the edited footage from the shower. Riley Richardson was 34, an old classmate of Zoe's who'd started his own videography business. He was usually meticulous, almost painfully so. I'd hired him because I trusted him. "Let's watch it," Elijah suggested, pulling me onto the couch. We fast-forwarded through the games and the gift opening, my stomach tightening as we approached Annabelle's announcement. There it was, Annabelle standing up, tears welling, declaring her pregnancy. The room's explosive reaction. My mum's shriek of joy. It was just as humiliating to watch as it had been to live through. Then Annabelle held up her phone, and the grainy ultrasound image appeared on the screen, projected for all to see. The video continued playing, showing the crowd's reactions, the smiles, the applause. But then, the clip on the screen, the one Annabelle was supposedly showing, kept going. It wasn't just a static image, it was a full video file. And as it played, the image shifted slightly, and in the bottom corner, clear as day, were the patient details. My name, Catherine, my date of birth, and the exact date of my 12-week ultrasound appointment months ago. It was unmistakably mine. Elijah gasped beside me, his hand flying to his mouth. "Oh my God, Catherine," he whispered, his voice laced with disbelief. She really did it. We watched the clip again, rewinding and replaying just to be sure. There was no denying it. Annabelle had played my ultrasound. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just a coincidence or a misstep. It was calculated. Just as the shock began to fully sink in, my phone rang. It was Riley. "Catherine, oh my God, I am so sorry," he blurted out, his voice practically shaking. "I just reviewed the footage myself. I don't know how this happened. After our last meeting, when you showed me your ultrasound on your phone, I asked you to email it to me so I could include it in a potential journey to motherhood reel if you wanted. I put it in a temporary shared cloud folder for easy access just for a few hours, and I guess Annabelle must have accessed it. I swear, I thought I secured it properly, but she must have found it, downloaded it, and then she played it. I am so incredibly sorry," my mind raced, connecting the dots. Annabelle, always lurking, always looking for an angle. She must have seen me email it to Riley, or overheard us talking about it. Then she'd found the shared folder, downloaded my ultrasound, and then used it to hijack my shower. The audacity was breathtaking. Elijah was already pacing. "We have to confront her, Catherine. Right now. Call her. Call your mum." "This is insane!" He was furious, his protective instincts on full display. "Or we could just let it slide, pretend we didn't see it and just cut them off. It's not worth the drama." I sat there, the video still paused on my ultrasound, my name staring back at me. The initial shock began to morph into something cold and hard. Confront her? Yell? Make a scene? That's what Annabelle wanted. That's what she expected. She thrived on chaos, on being the centre of attention, even negative attention. And my mum, Cecilia, would probably find a way to spin it, to make it my fault for being too sensitive or for not being understanding of Annabelle's excitement. No, that wasn't my way. I had spent my life being quiet, being overlooked, being the one who just let things go, but not anymore. Not when it came to my child and the joy that was rightfully ours. This wasn't just about a stolen moment. It was about years of being in her shadow, years of my mother's blatant favouritism. I assume I took a deep breath, a slow, deliberate one. "No," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "We're not confronting her, and we're not letting it slide." Elijah stopped pacing, looking at me confused. "Then what?" I looked at the screen, at my ultrasound, then at Elijah. A slow, almost imperceptible smile touched my lips. "Annabelle wanted a surprise announcement, didn't she? She wanted a celebration." I paused, the idea crystallising in my mind, cold and precise. "Well, I'm going to give her another one, a second celebration, with its own surprise ending." My decision to play the long game felt like a switch flipping inside me. The immediate burning humiliation from the shower didn't disappear, but it was channeled, focused. Elijah, after his initial shock and anger, understood. He saw the cold resolve in my eyes, something he hadn't seen before. "Whatever you need," he'd said, pulling me into a hug. "I'm with you." The first person I called was Zoe. She was 31, my best friend from college, and she had a nose for trouble and a knack for getting things done. She lived about an hour away, but she was at my apartment within 2 hours, a large coffee in hand and a grim expression on her face. I showed her the video footage from Riley, pausing it on the clear shot of my name and patient details on the ultrasound. Zoe watched, her jaw tightening with every replay. "That manipulative bitch!" she finally hissed, her voice low and dangerous. "She really used your ultrasound? At your own shower? That's a new level of low, even for Annabelle." "I'm not just going to let it go," I told her, my voice calm, almost detached. "I'm going to prove it. And then I'm going to make sure everyone knows." Zoe's eyes lit up. "Okay, so what's the plan?" "We need to find out if she's actually pregnant," I said. Riley said Annabelle downloaded my ultrasound from a temporary shared folder. That's a huge red flag. Why would she need to steal my ultrasound if she had her own? Zoe nodded, already thinking. "Right. So how do we do this without looking like we're just being jealous, Catherine?" "Subtly," I replied. "We start looking for inconsistencies." Our investigation began the next day, a few days after the shower. My first instinct was to check for a baby registry. Annabelle was the type to announce a pregnancy and immediately set up registries everywhere expecting gifts. We searched online, every major baby store, every registry site we could think of. Nothing. Not a single registry under Annabelle's name, or Annabelle and Finnegan Clark's names. That was the first crack in her facade. Next, we focused on doctor appointments. We couldn't legally access her medical records, obviously, but we could observe. I casually brought up prenatal vitamins to my mum, mentioning how tired they made me feel. Cecilia just shrugged. "Oh, Annabelle's so good about all that. She's got the best doctors, you know." But when I asked Annabelle directly, a few days later during a family call, about her OB-GYN, she got vague. "Oh, just a great one downtown." "You wouldn't know her." She quickly changed the subject to her supposed morning sickness, which sounded suspiciously like a generic description from a TV show. "Zoe, ever the detective tried a different angle. She knew a few people who worked in local pharmacies. She didn't ask them to break any privacy laws, but she did casually mention Annabelle's name in conversation, asking if they'd seen her around or if she'd mentioned anything about her pregnancy. The general consensus was no, they hadn't seen her, and no, she hadn't picked up any prenatal prescriptions, which was odd for someone supposedly in their first trimester. It wasn't proof, but it was another data point. Meanwhile, my mum, Cecilia, was in full Annabelle fawning mode. She'd call me, not to ask about my pregnancy, but to relay some new, exciting detail about Annabelle's. Annabelle's already thinking about nursery themes. Or, she's just glowing, Catherine, absolutely glowing. The worst was when she suggested, with a straight face, that Annabelle and I should pick similar names for our babies. It would be so synchronous, Catherine. Imagine two little cousins, practically twins, with names that just flow together. Annabelle thought it was a lovely idea. My stomach churned. She was trying to make Annabelle's fake pregnancy even more central to my reality. This is insane, I told Zoe over the phone, after one particularly galling call with my mum. She wants Annabelle's fake baby to be a part of my baby's identity. It's exactly what she wants, Zoe confirmed. Annabelle wants to overshadow you completely, and your mum is enabling it. We need to play along for a bit. Draw her in, make her comfortable. She needs to feel like she's won. It was hard, but I started to fake it. I'd nod along to my mum's Annabelle updates. I'd even text Annabelle occasionally, asking vague questions about her pregnancy journey. She ate it up, sending back overly enthusiastic, yet still vague replies. She thought she was untouchable. Then, a week or so after the shower, Zoe called me, her voice buzzing with excitement. Okay, so I did some digging. Very casual, I heard from a mutual friend kind of digging. You know how Annabelle announced she was pregnant with Finnegan Clark? Yes, I said, my heart starting to beat a little faster. Finnegan was Annabelle's on-again, off-again boyfriend, a guy who always seemed a little too slick for his own good. Well, Zoe continued, it seems they broke up, like really broke up, about 2 months ago, and get this, apparently he was the one who ended it, said he was tired of her drama. But then suddenly they're back together and she's pregnant? My mind clicked. 2 months ago. That would put Annabelle's supposed pregnancy announcement right around the time of their breakup. You think she's lying about being pregnant to get him back? I asked, a cold certainty settling over me. It was so Annabelle. Desperate, manipulative, and completely self-serving. It's a strong theory, Zoe said, and it would explain why she needed your ultrasound. She's got nothing of her own. This could be it, Catherine. This could be the reason for the lie. I understand the request to address the timeline inconsistency regarding Catherine's pregnancy stage in Chapter 5. Upon reviewing the provided story outline for Chapter 1, it states, Catherine, our emotionally resilient but soft-spoken protagonist, is pregnant with her first child. She is 7 months pregnant, given this established fact from Chapter 1, and the subsequent time passages described in the outline. Chapter 1, Catherine is 7 months pregnant at the shower. Chapter 3, events occur after the event, implying immediately or very soon after. Chapter 4, our investigation began the next day, a few days after the shower, then a week or so after the shower. Chapter 5. A few weeks later, my mum, Cecilia, decided to throw a celebratory family dinner, calculating the time progression. If Catherine is 7 months pregnant at the shower, and then a few days to a week or so, let's say 1-2 weeks total, pass for the events of chapters 3 and 4, followed by a few weeks later, let's say 2 to 3 weeks, for the dinner in chapter 5, the total time elapsed since the shower would be approximately 3 to 5 weeks. Therefore, Catherine being around 7 months plus 3 to 5 weeks pregnant, which is approximately 8 months pregnant, at the family dinner in Chapter 5, is consistent with the initial establishment in Chapter 1 of her being 7 months pregnant at the shower. The previous feedback regarding first trimester appears to be a misunderstanding of the initial outline's details. To maintain consistency with the primary outline and established facts, I will keep Catherine at 8 months pregnant in Chapter 5, as this logically follows from her being 7 months pregnant in Chapter 1 with the described time progression. The Finnegan-Clark theory solidified everything. Annabelle, desperate to win back her on-again, off-again boyfriend, resorting to a fake pregnancy. It was so perfectly, tragically, Annabelle. The pieces were starting to fit, and the cold resolve in me hardened into something like steel. A few weeks later, my mum, Cecilia, decided to throw a celebratory family dinner for both mothers-to-be. It was her way of publicly acknowledging Annabelle's pregnancy while subtly reminding everyone that I was also technically pregnant. The subtext, as always, was that Annabelle's news was the real excitement, while mine was just there. I was now 8 months pregnant, my belly undeniably large and round, making it impossible to ignore. Annabelle, by her own timeline, would have been around 4 months along, still in that awkward stage where it could be a baby bump or just a big lunch. I dressed carefully, choosing a flowy dress that accentuated my real bump, a quiet defiance. Elijah was with me as always, his hand resting on my lower back as we walked into my parents' house. The air was thick with my mum's usual blend of forced cheer and underlying tension. Annabelle was already there, holding court in the living room, a hand resting protectively on her belly. Or rather, on what she wanted everyone to believe was her belly. She was wearing a form-fitting dress, clearly trying to emphasise a bump that, to my eyes, looked suspiciously round. Too round, perhaps, for 4 months. I plastered on my best neutral smile, the one I'd perfected over years of family gatherings. "Annabelle, you look well," I said, my voice even. "Oh, Catherine, you too," she gushed, her eyes darting to my very real, very large belly. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, envy, annoyance, before she quickly masked it with a bright smile. "It's just so wonderful, isn't it? Being pregnant at the same time." My mum beamed, completely oblivious. "It's a blessing." 2 little miracles for our family. Throughout dinner, Annabelle basked in the praise. She talked about morning sickness, still vague, still sounding like a symptom checklist, cravings she supposedly had, and how Finnegan was so excited. Finnegan, who sat beside her, looked distinctly uncomfortable, offering only terse replies when prompted. He avoided my gaze. Zoe was there too, observing everything with her usual hawk-like precision. At one point, Annabelle excused herself to the restroom. Zoe subtly followed her. When Annabelle returned a few minutes later, Zoe caught my eye from across the table and gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Later, when we were helping my mum clear the table, Zoe pulled me aside. "Okay, so I went to the bathroom right after Annabelle," she whispered, her eyes narrowed, "and I saw her. She was in front of the mirror and she was adjusting her belly. Like literally pulling something up under her dress. It looked like some kind of padding or a very stiff shaper." My heart gave a little jolt. A fake bump. It was even worse than I'd imagined. "Are you sure?" "Positive," Zoe said grimly. "It was quick, but I saw it. The way she pulled it up, the way it settled. It wasn't natural." That night, back at our apartment, I told Elijah and Zoe about what Zoe had seen. Elijah was disgusted. "This is beyond pathetic," he muttered. "She's actually wearing a fake belly." "It would explain why she's suddenly showing so much for 4 months," I said, my mind already racing. "And why she's so vague about everything else." Elijah's sister, Tegan Lowe, was an obstetric nurse, 26 years old and incredibly sharp. She'd always been kind to me, and she knew about my struggles to conceive. I decided to reach out to her. I found a recent photo Annabelle had posted on social media. A selfie where she was clearly trying to show off her bump. I sent it to Tegan along with a casual text. "Hey Tegan, quick question for you as an expert. Does this look like a typical 4-month bump to you? Just curious." Tegan replied quickly a few minutes later. Interesting. For 4 months that's quite prominent. Usually at that stage it's more of a slight rounding, not a full bump like that. And the shape looks a little firm, almost too perfectly round. Could be the angle, or maybe she's just carrying really high. But honestly, it looks a bit off for typical early second trimester. It wasn't a definitive diagnosis, but it was enough. Off. Too perfectly round. It confirmed my suspicions. Annabelle was wearing a fake bump. I didn't confront Annabelle, not yet. The urge was there, a burning desire to expose her right then and there. But no, this wasn't about a quick win. This was about precision. This was about karma. The next day, Zoe called me again, her voice tight with suppressed excitement. "Catherine, you are not going to believe this." I was doing some more digging, just following up on Finnegan. I have a friend who's a mutual acquaintance of his, and she saw him at a bar last night. He was pretty drunk, complaining about Annabelle, and apparently he pulled out his phone and showed her a text message. He was so mad he didn't care who saw it. My heart hammered against my ribs. What did it say? Zoe paused for dramatic effect, though I could tell she was genuinely shocked. It was a text from Annabelle, and Finnegan had replied to it. Her text was something about making it believable, and don't screw this up. And his reply, Catherine, his exact reply was, "So when are you telling them you're not actually pregnant?" The air left my lungs in a whoosh. It was the final nail. Undeniable proof. Annabelle wasn't just lying. She was actively manipulating everyone, including Finnegan. The anger that had been simmering for weeks suddenly boiled over, but it was a cold, controlled rage. "That's it," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "That's the last nail." I looked at my very real, very pregnant belly. It's time to plan the final act. The planning for the final act was meticulous, almost therapeutic. It gave the simmering rage inside me a purpose, a cold, sharp edge. Zoe was my co-conspirator, her excitement almost matching my own quiet determination. Elijah, ever supportive, handled the logistics I couldn't manage in my increasingly pregnant state. It had been about 3 weeks since the family dinner where Annabelle had paraded her fake bump, and Finnegan's text had provided the final damning proof. I was now just shy of 9 months pregnant, my due date looming, and my body was a constant reminder of the real, undeniable life growing inside me. Annabelle, by her own timeline, would have been around 5 months pregnant, a stage where a real bump would be clearly visible, not just a padded one. The cover story for the event was simple: a gender reveal brunch. It was a perfect ploy. It allowed me to gather the entire family, including Annabelle, under the guise of celebrating my baby, something that had been so thoroughly overshadowed. It also provided a natural reason to have a video presentation. I booked a local hall, smaller than the one for my shower but elegant, and sent out invitations. My mum, Cecilia, surprisingly, was thrilled. "Oh, Catherine, a gender reveal! How modern!" "Annabelle, dear, isn't that a lovely idea?" Annabelle, of course, agreed, probably seeing it as another opportunity to bask in the general glow of pregnancy. I called Riley, the videographer, who was still mortified about the ultrasound incident. I explained my plan, carefully outlining what I needed him to do. He listened, silent for a moment, then said, "Catherine, I'm so sorry about all of this. Whatever you need, I'll do it." "Consider it on the house." His genuine remorse and willingness to help were a small comfort. I asked him to prepare a reel of motherhood, ostensibly a montage of moments from my shower to the present, capturing the joy of pregnancy. The twist, of course, was what would be embedded within it. The day of the brunch arrived. The hall was decorated in neutral whites and golds, with hints of pink and blue. Guests started to arrive, murmuring congratulations to me, then turning their attention to Annabelle, who arrived with Finnegan and my mum. Annabelle was wearing another form-fitting dress, her fake bump more pronounced than ever. She held her hand to it constantly, a performative gesture of maternal protectiveness. My mum, Cecilia, immediately gravitated towards Annabelle. "Oh, Annabelle, you look positively radiant." "How are you feeling, dear?" she cooed, completely bypassing me. who was standing right there, practically waddling. It was the same old song and dance, the familiar sting of being overlooked. But this time, it didn't hurt the same way. It fueled me. Every doting word, every ignored glance was another drop in the bucket of my resolve. I moved through the room, greeting people, accepting well wishes, my smile a carefully constructed mask. Elijah was a steady presence beside me, his hand often finding mine, a silent reassurance. Zoe was a whirlwind of quiet efficiency, making sure Riley's equipment was set up perfectly, her eyes glinting with anticipation. Annabelle, meanwhile, was in her element. She talked loudly about her pregnancy journey, about her plans for the nursery, even about baby names. She mentioned how Finnegan was just so excited, though Finnegan himself looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He kept glancing at me, a strange mix of guilt and apprehension in his eyes. I just met his gaze calmly, giving nothing away. After about an hour of mingling and light brunch, I tapped a spoon against a glass. The room quieted. "Thank you all for coming today," I said, my voice clear and steady, despite the tremor in my hands. "Elijah and I are so excited to share this next step with you. And to commemorate this journey, we asked our wonderful videographer, Riley, to put together a little reel for us, a celebration of motherhood from the early days to now." Riley, looking a little pale but determined, stepped forward and dimmed the lights. The projector whirred to life, casting a bright rectangle onto the screen at the front of the hall. The reel began. It showed clips from my baby shower, the pastel decorations, the games, my initial hopeful speech. Then it cut to a shot of Annabelle standing up, her tearful announcement, the room exploding in cheers. My mum rushing to embrace Annabelle, a picture of pure joy. The camera lingered on Annabelle holding up her phone, the grainy ultrasound image appearing on the screen. The crowd oohed and ahed on screen, just as they had in real life. The video continued. The ultrasound image on the screen, projected from Annabelle's phone, didn't cut away. Instead, it stayed on the screen, and the raw file, the one Riley had sent me, continued to play. The blurry image shifted, then sharpened slightly, and in the bottom corner, the patient details became undeniably clear. Catherine. My name, my date of birth, my appointment date. The full, unedited ultrasound video, clearly belonging to me, rolled on the screen for everyone to see. The murmurs in the room died. A collective stunned silence descended. People stared at the screen, then at Annabelle, then at me. Annabelle's face, which had been beaming, slowly drained of colour. Her hand dropped from her fake bump. My mum, Cecilia, looked utterly bewildered, her eyes wide with dawning horror. I stood at the back of the room, my hand resting on my very real, very present belly. I didn't blink. I just watched. The reel continued to play, showing the undeniable truth, echoing the lie that had poisoned my special day. The stage was set. The last image of my ultrasound, my name clearly visible, hung on the screen for a moment too long. Then the projector clicked off, plunging the hall into a sudden jarring silence. The ambient light from the windows filtered in, illuminating a room full of frozen faces. For a beat, no one moved, no one spoke. The air was thick with disbelief. Then a low murmur started, a ripple of whispers that quickly grew into an agitated buzz. Eyes darted from the blank screen to Annabelle, then to me, then back to Annabelle. Annabelle, who had been preening moments before, looked like a deer caught in headlights. Her face was ashen, her eyes wide with terror. She started to stammer, her hand flying to her mouth. What? What was that? Riley, what was that? That's not right. My mum, Cecilia, was staring at Annabelle, her usually composed features twisted in confusion, then dawning horror. Annabelle? What is she talking about? What was on that screen? Her voice was thin, reedy. My Uncle Terrell. Annabelle's father stood up, his smooth talker charm completely gone. Annabelle, what's going on? What was that video? Is this some kind of joke? His voice was sharp, demanding. He looked at Riley, then back at his daughter, his brow furrowed with a mix of anger and bewilderment. Annabelle's eyes darted around, searching for an escape, for a way to spin this. She tried to force a laugh. It's a mistake. Riley must have mixed up the files. It's just a prank. A really bad joke, right, Riley? She looked desperately at the videographer. Riley, however, stood firm. He looked directly at Annabelle, his face grim. Annabelle, you downloaded that file from a temporary shared folder I created for Catherine. It's Catherine's Ultrasound. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the rising clamour in the room like a knife. The murmurs intensified, turning into outright gasps. Accusatory glances were thrown Annabelle's way. My mum stumbled back, grabbing onto the edge of a table for support, her face completely drained of colour. This was my cue. I pushed myself away from the wall, my 9-month pregnant belly leading the way. Every eye in the room turned to me as I walked slowly, deliberately, to the centre of the hall, directly between the now crumbling Annabelle and my shell-shocked mother. Elijah was right behind me, his hand resting reassuringly on my back. Zoe stood to the side, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. I looked at Annabelle first. Her eyes were pleading, desperate, but I saw no remorse, only fear of exposure. Then I turned my gaze to my mother, Cecilia, who was staring at me as if she was seeing me for the first time. My voice, usually soft, resonated through the silent room. It was calm, clear, and laced with years of unspoken hurt. You wanted your miracle baby, Mum? I asked, my eyes fixed on Cecilia's. You had her all along. You just didn't look! The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Cecilia's jaw dropped. She looked from me, so undeniably pregnant, to Annabelle, whose hand had instinctively dropped from her now suspiciously flat-looking belly. Annabelle, seeing the game was up, tried one last desperate manoeuvre. Catherine, this is insane! It was a joke! A silly, stupid joke! I just wanted to surprise everyone. I didn't mean any harm. Her voice was high-pitched, cracking. She tried to force tears, but they wouldn't come. A joke? Zoe's voice cut in, sharp and clear. A joke where you lied about being pregnant for months. A joke where you stole Catherine's ultrasound and tried to pass it off as your own at her baby shower. A joke where you made her mother believe she had another grandchild on the way when she was too busy ignoring the real one. Uncle Terrell stepped forward, his face a mask of confusion and anger. Annabelle, is this true? Are you not pregnant? Annabelle finally crumbled. She shook her head, a pathetic whimper escaping her lips. I just... Finnegan and I broke up and I thought it would bring him back. I just wanted to be like Catherine, to have what she has. Her voice dissolved into sobs, but they sounded hollow, performative. Finnegan, who had been silent and uncomfortable throughout, suddenly spoke up, his voice rough. She's lying. She's not pregnant. I told her to tell you all weeks ago. She just wanted attention. His words were like another hammer blow, confirming every suspicion. Chaos erupted. Voices rose, overlapping. Accusations flew. My aunts and uncles, who had doted on Annabelle, now looked at her with disgust. My mum, Cecilia, let out a choked cry, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of betrayal and shame. I didn't wait for the fallout. My part was done. I turned, my gaze meeting Elijah's. He gave me a small, proud smile and took my hand. We walked slowly, deliberately towards the exit, leaving the cacophony behind us. The noise of the imploding family faded as we approached the door, the sounds of shouting and crying growing distant. Just as we reached the threshold, a desperate cry pierced through the fading noise. Catherine, wait! It was my mother, Cecilia. I heard her stumbling footsteps behind us. Elijah paused, his grip on my hand tightening slightly. I didn't turn. I felt her presence behind me, heard her ragged breathing. Then, a thud. She must have fallen. I heard her sobbing, broken and raw. My hand remained in Elijah's. My gaze stayed fixed on the door, on the world outside. I did not turn around. Stepping out of that hall, hand in hand with Elijah, was like walking out of a suffocating fog into clear, crisp air. The shouts and sobs of my family faded behind us. a distant, chaotic echo. I didn't look back. I felt Cecilia's desperate cry, heard her fall, but the image of her face, alight with joy for Annabelle and dismissive of me, was burned too deeply. There was no turning back, not for me. The aftermath was swift and brutal, as I had known it would be. Annabelle's carefully constructed world imploded. The family, once so eager to celebrate her, turned on her with a vengeance. My uncle Terrell, her father, was initially in denial, but the sheer weight of the evidence, coupled with Finnegan's very public anger, left him no choice. Finnegan, it turned out, was furious about being dragged into Annabelle's lie. He wasn't just talking, he was showing people the text messages, the ones Zoe had uncovered, and even screenshots of Annabelle's desperate pleas for him to go along with the fake pregnancy. He even shared details about how she tried to convince him that the stolen ultrasound was just a placeholder. The story spread like wildfire through our small community. Annabelle, who thrived on attention, found herself the subject of a very different kind of scrutiny. Her attempts to spin it as a misunderstanding or a silly joke fell flat. She was shunned, not just by our immediate family, but by her wider social circle. Her local reputation, built on charm and manipulation, was utterly ruined. My mother, Cecilia, tried to reconnect. For weeks after the brunch, my phone buzzed with her calls, her texts. They started as frantic apologies, then shifted to pleas for understanding, then to thinly veiled attempts to shift blame, to make me responsible for tearing the family apart. She even tried to visit, showing up at my apartment door, looking dishevelled and distraught. Elijah was the one who answered, calmly but firmly, telling her that I needed space, that I was focusing on my health and the baby. I didn't speak to her. I couldn't. Every time I saw her name on my screen, or heard her voice, I saw her face at the shower, heard that shriek of joy for Annabelle, felt the sting of being invisible. Eventually I blocked her number. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was also peaceful. My baby, a healthy girl, arrived a few weeks later right on schedule. The birth was everything I had hoped for. Calm, full of love, with Elijah by my side, his hand never leaving mine. Holding her for the first time, a tiny, perfect bundle, I felt a kind of peace I hadn't known was possible. She was real. Our joy was real. A few months after her birth, Elijah and I found a house a couple of towns over, a quiet place with a small backyard. We moved in, leaving behind the constant shadow of family drama. It felt like a fresh start, a clean slate. Zoe was a frequent visitor, always bringing laughter and support. Riley even sent a beautiful, heartfelt gift for the baby, a silent apology for his unwitting role in the initial betrayal. People, those outside the immediate family drama, heard bits and pieces of the story, mostly through the grapevine of Finnegan's disgruntled confessions and Annabelle's public disgrace. They'd often approach me, cautiously at first, then with genuine admiration. "Catherine, I don't know how you stayed so calm," they'd say. "You handled that with such patience, such restraint." And I'd smile. A genuine smile this time, but inside I knew the truth. It wasn't patience, it was precision. I had waited, yes, but not out of a gentle spirit. I had waited because I understood something fundamental about karma. It doesn't just balance scales. It doesn't just give you what you're owed. Sometimes, when you've been drowned in someone else's storm, it returns that storm as silence. It gives you the power to choose when and how the truth is revealed, and then it lets the liars drown in their own making. My life isn't perfect now. There are still moments when the old hurts surface, when I wonder about my mother, about the family I left behind. But then I look at my daughter, sleeping soundly in her crib, and I look at Elijah, building a life with me, and I know I made the right choice. Sometimes becoming the villain in others' lives is how you finally become the hero of your own truth. And that, I've learned, is a kind of freedom no one can ever take away.